My wife cheated with my best friend, then years later sued me for half of my $800, $0 inheritance claiming she deserves it as community property. And I just found out the house we live in was bought with funds from her ex-husband's business. What do I do? I never thought I'd be the guy who gets like this, but here I am, sitting in my own living room, trying to process how my wife, Lisa, managed to turn my entire world upside down. It started with little things. She was more distant, secretive even. She'd hide her phone when I entered the room, and suddenly she was too busy to have dinner with me. At first I thought maybe she was stressed at work or just tired, but then I noticed the little things that didn't add up. Her phone bill shot up, and her messages were suddenly encrypted. That's when I started paying attention. One night, I came home early from work because I wasn't feeling well. I decided to check her phone just out of curiosity, stupid, I know, but I felt something was off. I unlocked her phone when she was in the shower, and what I saw made my stomach drop. There were texts, explicit messages, and even pictures, stuff that clearly indicated she was having sex with someone else. The guy's name was Mark. They'd been talking for months, and I found out they'd even met up a few times. It wasn't just a fling, it was a full-blown affair. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. I felt numb, then furious. How could she do this? How could she lie to my face for so long? We'd been together almost 10 years, and I thought we had a solid marriage. Turns out I was just fooling myself. That night I confronted her. I woke her up, threw the phone on the bed, and asked her what the hell was going on. Lisa's face twisted into a look of pure contempt. She spat out that it was just sex, that everyone cheats sometimes, and I was overreacting. She told me I was paranoid, that I didn't understand her, that Mark was just a rebound or some kind of stupid mistake. She insisted it didn't mean anything, that she loved me, and that I should just forget about it. But her words felt hollow. I could see the lie in her eyes, and I knew she was lying. She always was good at that, lying, twisting things around, making herself the victim. The worst part, she had the nerve to call me insecure, to say I was overreacting because I'd been checking her phone. She said I was paranoid and that I needed to trust her. Trust her. After all this, how could I trust someone who's been sneaking around behind my back? The betrayal cut so deep I couldn't even speak. I just stared at her, my mind racing with anger, sadness, confusion, all at once. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything I'd seen, trying to figure out how I missed the signs. I thought about our life together, our house, the plans we made, the future I'd imagined. And now it all felt like a lie. I started questioning everything. Was she ever really faithful? Did she love me at all? Or was I just some placeholder until she found someone better? The pain was overwhelming, and I realized I'd have to make some serious decisions soon. But right now, I was just trying to breathe, trying to hold myself together while inside. I was falling apart. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't look at Lisa the same way, not after discovering she'd been sneaking around with Mark behind my back. I was angry, yes, but more than that, I felt betrayed. Deep down, I felt like I'd been played for a fool. The trust I once had in her was shattered, and I knew I couldn't just sweep this under the rug. I needed answers, but more importantly, I needed to figure out what I was going to do next. The next morning, I started digging into her phone's data, texts, emails, social media. I wanted to understand exactly how long this had been going on, what kind of person she really was. It didn't take long to find out. The messages between her and Mark went back almost 6 months. They had met up several times, sometimes at hotels, sometimes at her place when she thought I was working late. She lied about everything, said she was going out with friends or that she was just working late at the office. The lies were so smooth I almost believed her at first, but now I saw the truth laid bare. What made it worse was realizing she'd been hiding money from me. Turns out she'd secretly opened a bank account, probably with the money she'd been earning from her affair or maybe from her ex-husband's business. She'd been squirreling away cash, buying jewelry, clothes, even little trips. I found receipts and bank statements, some of which showed deposits from her ex-husband's business, which she claimed she had no connection to. But I had my doubts. I remembered her mentioning her ex a few times, always with that sneer, that attitude like she was better than him. Now I wondered if she'd been secretly involved in some shady stuff. I felt so stupid for not seeing the signs earlier. She'd always been bitchy and manipulative, but I thought it was just her personality. Turns out, she was hiding a whole other life. And the more I uncovered, the more I realized this wasn't just about cheating. It was about betrayal on a level I hadn't expected. I started questioning everything, her motives, her lies, even our marriage. I thought about confronting her again, but I knew that wouldn't do any good. She'd twist it, deny everything, and call me paranoid again. No, I needed a plan. I decided I couldn't let her get away with this, especially not without consequences. I remembered how she'd always been so bitchy, so good at lying and manipulating situations. I knew I had to be smarter, more calculated. I started gathering evidence, making copies of everything. I wanted to be ready for whatever came next. I also reached out to a lawyer just to get some advice, because I knew that if she was claiming half my inheritance as community property, I'd have to fight to protect what was mine. I'd worked hard for that money, and I wasn't about to let her take it all just because she was feeling entitled or angry. The thing that burned me most was her attitude, how she kept lying and pretending everything was fine. She'd throw tantrums, call me insecure, accuse me of cheating myself. But I knew the truth. I'd been blind, but now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who didn't think twice about screwing over the people who loved her. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not without a fight. I made a promise to myself then. I'd expose her lies, protect what's mine, and make her realize she can't just play with people's lives like it's a game. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. After spending days gathering all the evidence I could find, I finally felt like I had enough to confront Lisa again, this time with a clearer plan and a stronger backbone. I knew it wouldn't be easy. She's always been good at turning things around, twisting facts, and making herself look innocent. But I also knew that her lies couldn't hold up forever, especially not now that I had the proof. One afternoon, I sat her down in the living room, the evidence spread out on the table in front of us. I kept my voice steady, trying to sound calm but firm. I told her I knew about her affair, about the secret accounts, about the money from her ex-husband's business, and everything else I'd uncovered. At first, everything, her bitchy attitude kicking in full force. "You're crazy," she snapped. "You're just insecure. I don't know what you're talking about." But I cut her off. I threw the receipts and screenshots on the table and looked her right in the eye. "You've been lying to me for months. I've seen the messages, the bank statements, the proof of your secret accounts. Don't bother pretending anymore. I know everything." Her face paled for a moment, then she looked furious. She tried to deny it all, calling me paranoid, accusing me of spying on her, of being jealous and controlling. That's when I saw her true colors. She was furious, desperate even, trying to manipulate her way out of this mess. Her reaction was typical. She started crying, but not because she was sorry. No, it was the kind of crocodile tears she always used when she wanted to guilt-trip someone. "You're just mad because I still look good and you're insecure," she spat. "You think I cheat, but I don't. You're just jealous I found someone else who appreciates me." I could see her face twisting with anger and defiance. She was trying to turn the tables, make me feel guilty for catching her, like I was the one who did wrong. But I wasn't buying it. I told her I was done with her lies, that I was done pretending everything was okay. I made it clear I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I told her I was planning to get a divorce, and I was going to fight her for my inheritance and the house. I wanted her to realize that her actions had consequences, that I wasn't going to be her fool any longer. I also warned her that I'd be consulting a lawyer to see what legal options I had, especially considering the money she'd hidden and the fact that the house might have been bought with funds from her ex-husband's business, something I just recently stumbled upon. As I spoke, she looked more furious than ever, her bitchy demeanor bubbling to the surface. She spat back, "You'll regret this. You think you're so smart, but I'll make sure you lose everything. You don't know what you're messing with." That's when I realized I was dealing with someone who was deeply manipulative and dangerous, someone who wouldn't go down without a fight. But I also knew I couldn't let her control the narrative anymore. I had to stand my ground. That confrontation was a turning point. I knew I was about to step into a legal and emotional battle, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in months, I was no longer in the dark. I saw her for what she truly was, someone who lied, cheated, and manipulated her way through life. And I was finally ready to fight back, to protect what was rightfully mine. I didn't know exactly how it would all play out, but I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. The truth was out, and I had to face the consequences, whatever they might be. The days that followed that confrontation felt like walking through a fog. I had laid everything out on the table, and now it was time to figure out what the next move was. I reached out to a lawyer I found through a recommendation, someone with a reputation for handling tricky divorce cases and property disputes. During our initial consultation, I explained everything: her affair, the hidden bank accounts, the house bought with funds from her ex-husband's business, and her blatant lies. The lawyer listened carefully, took notes, and then told me what I already suspected. I had a solid case to fight for my inheritance and to challenge her claim that the house was community property. The lawyer warned me, though, that her tactics wouldn't stop there. Lisa was manipulative and could try to drag things out in court. She might even try to claim emotional distress or some made-up reason to justify her actions. But I was prepared. I had all the evidence, and I was ready to fight. I also decided I needed to get my financial house in order. I made a list of all the assets, bank accounts, investments, and anything that could be relevant in the upcoming legal battle. I knew she'd try to spin things in her favor, but I was determined to stay focused and not let her manipulate me. Meanwhile, Lisa's attitude only grew more bitchy and aggressive. She started throwing tantrums, calling me names, accusing me of being controlling, jealous, and insecure. She'd scream at me in front of the kids, calling me a paranoid psycho and a loser who can't keep his wife happy. I tried to stay calm. Inside, I was boiling, but I knew losing my temper wouldn't help. I'd learned that with her, she thrived on chaos and emotional manipulation. So I kept my cool, gathered my evidence, and prepared for the legal fight ahead. One of the most shocking moments came when I found out that the house we lived in wasn't entirely ours, at least not legally. I discovered that it was purchased with money from her ex-husband's business, money she had access to and possibly even helped funnel into the property. I confronted her about this, and she just shrugged, acting like it was no big deal. She lied, of course, claiming she had no idea where the money came from, that she was just lucky to buy the house. But I knew better. I had seen the bank statements, large deposits from her ex-husband's company, suspicious transfers, and even some receipts for renovations paid with company funds. That revelation changed everything. It meant that the house wasn't technically her community property, and if I played my cards right, I could argue that she had no real claim to it. I started to realize how deep her deception went. She'd been lying about her finances, her motives, everything. It made me angrier, how she thought she could get away with this, manipulating her way into a house that was partially bought with illicit funds. I knew I had to act fast before she tried to spin this into something else, like claiming I'd been controlling or abusive just to muddy the waters. By now I was exhausted emotionally and physically, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't just about the money or the house anymore. It was about justice, about making her face the consequences of her actions. I was done playing nice. I was done pretending I didn't see what she was doing. I decided I'd push forward with the legal process, fight her claims, and protect what was mine. I also started documenting every interaction, every lie, every manipulative move she made. If this was going to go to court, I wanted to be ready. I knew Lisa. She'd try to sabotage me, accuse me of things, or even try to threaten me. But I wasn't going to let her win. Not this time. The legal process moved faster than I expected once I handed over all my evidence. My lawyer filed the necessary motions to contest Lisa's claim for half of my inheritance and to clarify the ownership of the house. It was clear she was preparing to fight dirty. She started making calls, trying to turn friends and family against me, claiming I was a controlling, jealous husband who was trying to cheat her out of her rights. But I knew better. I had the documentation, the bank statements, the texts, and the proof that the house was bought with funds from her ex-husband's business. Lisa's behavior only got more bitchy and manipulative. She'd throw tantrums, scream at me in front of the kids, call me a terrible husband, and accuse me of trying to ruin her. She even started claiming I'd been abusive, something that made my blood boil. I knew that was her way of trying to weaken my case, to make herself look like the victim, but I stayed calm. I knew her game. The most unexpected twist came when I received a subpoena for her phone records from her ex-husband's business. Turns out, she'd been funneling money from that company into her own accounts, and some of it had gone into the house's renovation costs. This was huge. It proved the house wasn't bought with community funds, but with money she had access to through her ex-husband's business, which she'd lied about. I couldn't believe how deep her deception went. She'd been lying about everything: her finances, her motives, even her reasons for staying with me. Meanwhile, I was working on my own financial documents. I wanted to make sure I could prove what I'd earned, what I'd inherited, and how much of it was truly mine. I also started talking to a forensic accountant to trace the money flows, just in case she tried to claim that I was hiding assets or that I was somehow responsible for the financial mess she'd created. I knew Lisa's tactics. She was good at twisting facts, making herself look innocent, and shifting blame. I had to be prepared for anything. As the court date approached, I felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. I was relieved that I had the evidence to fight her claims, but anxious because I knew Lisa wouldn't go down without a fight. She was manipulative, vindictive, and desperate. I expected her to pull out all the stops: more lies, false accusations, maybe even some legal tricks to delay the proceedings. But I was ready. I'd made my decision. I was not going to let her take what's mine, and I was determined to expose her for what she really was: a selfish, manipulative woman who thought she could get away with everything. In the end, I realized that the fight wasn't just about money or property. It was about standing up for myself, protecting my dignity, and making sure she couldn't keep lying and twisting things to suit her narrative. I've learned a lot through this process. Trust no one blindly, document everything, and never underestimate how far someone will go to get what they want. I don't know what the final outcome will be, but I know I've done everything I can to hold onto what's rightfully mine. And honestly, that's the best I can do right now. The court date finally arrived, and I felt like I was walking into a battlefield. I had all my evidence organized: bank statements, texts, receipts, expert reports, and I was ready to fight for what was mine. Lisa showed up looking frantic, her usual bitchy smirk replaced with a thin, forced smile. She tried to act confident, but I could see her eyes darting around, probably trying to come up with some last-minute manipulative tactic. I stayed composed, knowing that I had the truth on my side. The proceedings were intense. Lisa's lawyer tried to argue that the house was community property, citing her claims of being entitled to half of everything because we were married, but I presented the evidence that proved otherwise. I showed the court the bank deposits from her ex-husband's business, the receipts for renovations paid with illicit funds, and the fact that she had secretly opened accounts and hidden assets from me. I explained how she'd lied about her motives, manipulated her way into the house, and tried to claim my inheritance as her entitlement. Throughout the hearing, Lisa's attitude was confrontational. She threw accusations, called me controlling, and even tried to paint me as an unfit husband who was trying to sabotage her. But I stayed calm and factual. I knew I had the upper hand because I wasn't just talking. I had proof. When the judge reviewed all the evidence, it was clear she saw through her lies. The judge ruled in my favor, declaring that the house was not community property and that Lisa had no claim to my inheritance. She also ordered Lisa to pay court costs for her frivolous claims and warned her about making false accusations. The aftermath was a mix of relief and heartbreak. I was relieved because the legal battle was over, and I finally had clarity, but I also felt sadness, sad that my marriage had been built on lies and betrayal. I told Lisa she needed to leave the house, and I filed for divorce shortly after. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, but I knew I couldn't stay with someone who lied and manipulated her way into my life and assets. In the months that followed, I worked hard to rebuild. I focused on my kids, my career, and my own well-being. I learned to trust my instincts again and to be wary of people who seem charming but hide dark motives. I also realized how important it is to protect yourself, financially, emotionally, legally. I didn't get everything I wanted, but I got justice, and that's what mattered most. Looking back, I see how much I've grown from this experience. I learned that betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you who you really are: resilient, determined, and capable of standing up for yourself. If there's one thing I want others to take away from my story, it's this: never ignore the warning signs, document everything, and trust your gut. People can surprise you in the worst ways, but you have the power to fight back, to protect what's yours, and to come out stronger on the other side.